Live and direct, live and a date no jive.
Legalize it.
So how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, "Great, Barry, a reefer."
Hi, welcome back. It's another episode of the Karma Koala podcast. And today I've got Jarid Turner, who is on his way home somewhere, I think. And he is a US guy who's been in sustainable agriculture and cannabis for the past 10 years or so. And so I thought we'd just get him on the podcast and talk about that, simply because it's not a topic that most people are interested in at all. So it's really nice to come across somebody who believes that, what to me seems blatantly obvious is that cannabis should be a leader in sustainable agriculture. But unfortunately, at the moment, it isn't. Jarid, thanks for joining us on the Karma Koala podcast. How did you start?
Thank you for having me.
That's cool. How did you start in terms of growing weed? And was sustainable agriculture something that you thought about from the very beginning, or was it something that, as time went on, you saw more value to?
So I got into agriculture. My family has been in agriculture for quite some time. My granddad grew up in a farming family, and I grew up, being part of like the farming ventures that they had at their house. They had like an apple tree, a small garden. So a lot of these things were like common to me. But it wasn't until my dad passed away in about 2018. I went on a Euro trip, spent some time in London, spent some time in Switzerland, Germany, in Switzerland, both Zurich and Geneva. And while I was in Geneva, I had received a call from a mentor of mine about a job opportunity that was available for me back in home in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
This was working for a company that he was one of the head engineers there at a company called Crop One. It was initially called Fresh Box Farms. There, they were basically taking container farms and retrofitting them into vertical farms using hydroponics. I immediately came back to the States after my mentor had given me the word on the opportunity. He said it was going to be like a really good opportunity for me, and it's going to be like future focus. And I was looking for something new. I was going through some things with dealing with the loss of my dad, and kind of wanted something new in the industry because I'd been in project management, had been in a lot of manufacturing jobs, and kind of wanted something different. And that was an opportunity for me to get in there. And from day one of being there and getting a walkthrough of the facility that they had in Millis, Massachusetts, I was like, yeah, this is definitely something I wanted to be a part of. And instantly I hit the ground running. One thing about me, I like to build things, create ideas, and see them come to life. And at Crop One, that was definitely one of the things that was done there. We took the designs that we had for container farms and then started creating larger rooms, and everything from the software to the racks was like customized by us. And I just enjoyed that aspect of it, that it was something new. I never really knew that you could just grow simply with water. And being at Crop One, I was around a lot of individuals that were super passionate from all different aspects of agriculture, scientists, botanists, engineers, from computer engineers to like hardware, mechanical engineers like myself. And there we got an opportunity to be in a lot of things. We R&D lights, we R&D fans, we R&D setups, and different racking systems. And I just love the process of all of us coming together to create this system that was simple for almost anyone to use. And one of the key aspects that I liked about Crop One was, even though I was an engineer, they made us go through the whole process of harvesting, germination, packing, shipping, the whole run of the operation, so that we could not only understand what we were building, but also
how it works.
creating a creating yeah, how it works and how to create like a good workspace. So with that opportunity, like I said, we had the opportunity to R&D lights. So I was testing all types of cool lights from Osram to GE to Philips to Grogenics. Lights that did all types of things, like you could fine tune them, or we get custom spectrums for different lights that allowed the plants to do different things, and learning about the different spectrums and how they improve the plants. So I would say that the thing that really opened my eyes was just what Crop One was able to do with all the things that we were doing there. Um, and even getting like certifications, getting kosher certified, and using vertical farming techniques, and the different individuals that wanted to come see the farm. So it started there. And from Crop One, I went on to work for Sensei Agriculture, which is Larry Elson's agriculture company. I got the opportunity to take what I had learned from hydroponics and started to apply it to aquaponics and all types of other greenhouse setups. We had sturgeon at the farm that I was working at and managing. We had sturgeon fish, and we would use the water from the fish to feed the lettuce. And this was completely, um, it was like a throwback method of utilizing the waste from the fish and feeding that to the plants, and then using lilies and other plants to put oxygen back into the water, then pumping that back to the fish. And it was every single one of the spots that I went to, it was utilizing everything that we had and making sure that it was efficient. Because when you're selling something like lettuce, you're not making a lot of money on the product, so you got to be very cautious of the overhead. We found all types of ways working at those two companies to make really good and innovative setups going forward for the agriculture scene.
But basically, the setups you're talking about are for indoor grows rather than outdoor
Yes.
grows. How do you define the sustainability of it in terms of, is it mainly in terms of energy use, or is it more, as you were just saying, in that sort of circular economy of the of producing the product where you try and use all the resources and then reuse those resources again? I mean, have you
Mhm.
defined a sort of setup in terms of how you do this with cannabis? And are other people doing the same as you, or is this something that's quite new in indoor grows in cannabis in the US?
So yeah, I also forgot to incorporate the cannabis. So while I was at Sensei, I was working in greenhouses, and when you work with a greenhouse, it's like a combination of outdoor because you're utilizing the sun, but you're also utilizing pumps and other mechanisms to kind of find a hybrid space, and
Yeah.
that's where you find the sustainability. Because I personally believe, like a greenhouse, you get the control, you can help keep out pests. You also can control the climate in that space easier, and it's easier to create microclimates inside those places that you can now grow all types of crops, adding different setups. So from there, and using those techniques that I had learned in um, hydroponics and learning the whole grow process of plants, I actually went and started a hemp farm in Iowa with a business partner of mine, Austin. We started a 2-acre hemp farm, and on that hemp farm, what we utilized was another sustainable aspect, which was sustainable fertilizer. We found a manufacturer, not a manufacturer, but a producer of fish fillets, and a lot of the parts that were left behind would be like the guts, the head, tails, bones, and things like that. And they were paying to get rid of that waste. And what we realized and found out from like a little bit of study, there were old techniques like from the Aztec Mayans, which they would do at the end of harvest, which would be bury the carcasses of fish and the spare parts into the ground, so that it could bring nutrients back to the soil during the wintertime. So as you had asked, sustainability comes from utilizing a lot of techniques that have been used before, but also incorporating some of the technology that we have nowadays to fine tune things, like feeding schedules and lighting schedules and spectrums, and playing with fine tuning spectrums. Learned a lot about spectrums like far red, and what that does to the plant and helping it go to sleep and wake back up, and with those type of processes, you can almost guarantee a better yield, because you could do things like start your plantlets indoors and then slowly climatize the plants to the outdoors, so then you can plant them at a more mature transplant them at a more mature state, and now that plant gets the ability to get the sunlight and grow more abundantly, since it's a little bigger from the time that you transplant it. You're not starting from seed. There's other techniques like learning about drip irrigation, and making sure that the plants are getting constantly fed, so that, like, if you ever encounter a drought or something like that, you can make sure that the plants are still being fed. And then also with like greenhouses, like you can start throwing up shading to make sure that the plants aren't wilting and not getting burnt. So there's just like a wide array of things that we have learned about growing plants from people who've been doing agriculture for so long. But now that we have the technology, we can start fine tuning things to make sure that the harvest is plentiful.
Have you noticed that it brings your costs down quite a lot by employing these methodologies?
And I learned this more so at Sensei, where it's like it's more about the climate. Like if you're in like a urban location where land's not in abundance, you want to be very resourceful with the space that you have. So like vertical farming becomes something that's very advantageous. Like you have a basement that is cooled from the ground. Then you have to worry about dehumidification and maybe heating up the space every once in a while, providing lighting. Or if you're in a place that has an abundance of sun, you learn different ways to cool with like passive cooling with fans and things like that, and creating microclimates that you know in the area that the plant is growing, and you can make sure that that's cool, but the air above it may be extremely hot. There's just so many different ways that you can manipulate the climate to make sure that that plant is getting the climate that it naturally grows in. And I think with the technology that we have, we can basically grow a lot of things that we normally wouldn't be able to grow in certain climates almost year round, or even bring some crops to places that we might not be able to grow. And we start to now step into the realm of, the farm to table. Like we make sure that, crops are harvested too early. We're getting them right when they're ripe and ready to go, so that, they're more shelf stable and they last longer in your refrigerator. They last longer on your shelves. And with utilizing all these concepts and having the information that we can pull from you know all the weather patterns and things like that, we can now start to develop controlled climates basically in different areas, and figuring out, okay, which one's going to cost us more energy, which one's not going to cost more on energy, because we can now supplement the lighting, or we don't have to supplement the lighting, so now we don't have to use the lighting bill. But maybe in those places that have an abundance of sunlight, like California, we might need to use a lot of energy on cooling and heating and air conditioning. But it's all about figuring out that sweet spot of how little can I add to what I already have to continue to keep growing, or finding ways to bring crops to places that normally we wouldn't have been able to.
When you're talking about this sustainable agriculture, you're talking about a lot of across a whole range of crops that you work in. Are you trying to develop this thinking for cannabis and hemp, and trying to essentially sell these ideas into that industry that uses for a lot of resources to produce their crops at the moment?
Yeah, so in the cannabis industry, definitely we're definitely copying some of some of these aspects. And a lot of people are already utilizing this because you got places like where I'm at right now in Massachusetts. You have people being able to grow a lot of product indoors, and they're utilizing these same type of techniques. One of the companies that I got the pleasure to work with was Philos. Philos, to me, I always call it, it's like a 23, like a 23andMe or for cannabis plants, and
Yeah.
it allows you to know, okay, this is where this genetic is are from. These are the type of climates that it likes. So then, with that type of information, you can now go and recreate that climate so that your plants grow effectively. And I think as we learn more and more about different strains and more strains are coming out, we start to add a library of like how do we grow these and grow these efficiently, because overhead is one of the killers of all businesses, and that's one of the things that you want to worry about, because if you're spending a lot of money to grow the crop, then the customer is going to end up eating that cost. And if the price is too high, now you're going to start to limit the type of customers you're having. So learning and incorporating all types of growing techniques that make the business of growing indoors sustainable, especially with so many markets opening up legally for cannabis, in cold areas and warm areas and all types of areas. You want to always be able to make sure that you can get a repeatable yield. So with that, you're doing a lot of learning. A lot of new techniques are coming out, so a lot of people are testing different things, but it's basically science at the end of the day, and this is a scientific method of trying things over and over and seeing what's repeatable and what flaws does one system have over the other, and seeing where different systems can be implemented based off the climate again, because the climate basically controls what type of grow you can have, where you can grow, whether you're using greenhouse, whether you're growing outdoors, whether you're growing fully indoors and in a warehouse or something like that. Having as much information as you can allows you to now recreate the climate and um, do that balancing act of creating the climate, but not increasing the cost to a point where it's not a good business model.
And are you finding a lot of cannabis growing businesses are far more interested in more inventive approaches to the agriculture of growing cannabis than they were, say, a couple of years ago?
Yes, not definitely now, because it's more acceptable nowadays. Like you don't have to like grow in your closet or some basement, or hide that you're growing cannabis. We have things like NJ BizCon or NECAN, where you can go to these type of conferences and freely share this information with other individuals that are in this space. So I do think that there's a it's no longer in the shadows. Now people can do it out in the open, and start to grow. One of the things that I started to do, one of my good friends, James McGlashlin, he was one of my roommates during the time I started to first get into the industry. He had been growing in tents. He has a business called Crystal Gardens, where they basically would set up tents, help people learn how to grow hydroponically. And I learned a lot from just living with him, because one of the rooms we had in our apartment was just specifically for growing different strains and utilizing the lights that I was getting, and like different pumps and timers and things like that, and trying those things out. So it definitely helped me learn more about what I was doing, because I had someone that had the experience of growing. So I didn't have to go through those growing pains. I could always like stay up late with him and chop shop and learn a lot from him about growing cannabis. And then I knew how the lights were supposed to work, or the HVAC and things like that were supposed to work. And I think it was like the collaboration of the two of us. And another one of my good buddies, not James, Ben Ainsworth, a buddy of mine from Crop One. We used to carpool, and every single morning we kind of pop ideas back and forth. Me as the engineer, and him as like the scientist, and we would just throw ideas back and forth. And this is something um, that definitely helped me. I think that is helping other people in the industry, of having people that you can work with now and share this information. It's not like we're just talking about some black market thing anymore. This is legitimate businesses that are going on now that are, getting funded and have a lot of support behind them. So when those people are no longer just in the shadows, you get to have these conversations and speak freely about it and share ideas.
All of this stuff that we're talking about, I'm presuming the way that it's designed, it does scale up. So when the really big end of town cannabis producers want to engage with this sort of technology, it's very easy to scale.
I would never say it's very easy, just because there's so many moving parts. Um, Depending on where you're at, your cost per kilowatt hour is going to be different. So you're going to be pretty stringent on like when you set the lights on and the HVAC on, because that's very energy intensive. Some of the things that we did to get around that, like here in Massachusetts, we got on peak and off peak. So like it'd be better to set your plant's daytime hours
Yeah.
during the off peak where cost is a little low, or if you're in a place where energy is very cheap because you have a bunch of solar panels, like you might not care about when your lights are on and off because you got the free energy from outside. Or if you're growing in the greenhouse and you have sunlight and you're only worried about pumps, pumps are not taking as much energy as lights and HVAC. I guess it's just about knowing all the different tricks so that when you get in different areas, you now know what trick to apply to
To make
the
it work in
different
that
place that
environment.
you're on. Exactly.
Are you seeing like the future of cannabis agriculture by default will be about sustainable agriculture in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
The business of cannabis is an extremely cash intensive business, so like it has to be sustainable, because if it's not a sustainable model, your business is just gonna crumble. um like if you're using too much energy, you're using too much, putting too much money into your fertilizers, too much money in to whatever type of setup that you have, then at the end of the day your crop is going to be at an extremely high price. And some markets don't have the margins for that, so you always got to be
Keep
creative,
driving that price
whatever
down.
design that
Yeah.
you have. Exactly.
Well, look, Jared, thank you very much for talking to us about the new technologies and the ideas coming into growing cannabis, because I've noticed over the last 5 years that it's been a very energy intensive and very wasteful approach to growing the plant, which has grown naturally all over the planet for thousands of years. So it's really good to see
Yeah.
that guys like yourself are working with other scientists and, as you say, botanists, agriculture people, to actually create systems for indoor grows that actually work well for the grower and for the consumer.
And another thing I wanted to add is it's not even just the flower itself. I got the pleasure to work with a buddy of mine recently, Harry Hemp, where he's growing hemp, and well, he's growing his hemp business where he's using the hemp lime and utilizing that for making structures. It creates a really strong bond and really strong material that allows the walls to breathe. It's antimicrobial. It's
No,
flame
no,
resistant.
the more
Uh,
talk we have about industrial hemp, the happier I am.
yeah, because that's one of the things that really needs to change, because this is a material that, like, a lot of that plant waste, that's what they consider it, is like plant waste, the stalks and everything, could be utilized right now, but there's not a lot of accepted building code
Exactly.
uh
It's all like
for those
send it to
materials. So
politicians.
it's like politics in a way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's always the case. But yeah, because I think the problem with the US is a lot of hemp was grown for human consumption when they should have actually been thinking about hemp materials, because that's
Exactly.
far more important in the short term, I'd suggest.
Yeah, and these things have been around for so long. This is
Yeah.
not new age. It was at one point a time, I believe, in America, if you owned land of about a quarter acre of
You had to grow
your
hemp.
land, you had to grow hemp.
Yep.
That you had to grow hemp. So it's like, how do we go away from where you were forced to grow hemp to like you're not allowed to
I
grow
know
it
it's crazy. We live in a
anymore?
crazy world.
It's
We live in
crazy.
a crazy,
Yeah.
crazy world. Look, Jared, fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to get you back on
No
later in
problem.
the year, and maybe we'll talk
All
more
right.
about some industrial hemp stuff because that's really interesting.
Definitely. I got to connect you with my buddy Harry Hemp. He's got a wealth of way more information on that than I do. But yeah, I just got the pleasure to like work with him and see a lot of what he's been doing, and he's doing a lot of great things.
Okay, thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you for the time.
Live and direct, live and a date, no jive.
Legalize it. I mean, how much can a koala bear? Koala bear, koala bear. Koala bear. Barry pulls a joint out of his pocket. Bill says, great, Barry, a reefer.